All right, so we got it out of the cryovac here, dried it down a little bit with some paper towels because it comes out of that cryovac pretty wet from all the blood that's been unthawing over about 4 days period of time. So right now I'm going to be showing you how to trim a brisket. You don't want to put a brisket like this just fully from the butcher shop straight up, because a lot of times with this there's a lot that needs to be trimmed off here, and you want it aerodynamic to where things aren't going to crisp and singe and burn up on the cook. It'll ruin a brisket cook and have uneven mouthfeel. So a lot of times you want to make this a little more aerodynamic. So this is fat side up. I'm going to take this little bit of the mohawk here. This is a lot of just fat that you want to trim this down so it's not just going to ruin a cook here and singe up, and this won't render down properly on the smoke that we're doing here. I'm going to see what this is looking like. I'm going to probably trim some more off of here. This is a pretty big fat cap. If you want to know what type of knives I'm using, it's the Cutlux Artesian Edition. These are very good. It comes in like a set of 3 with this, the big scimitar knife, and the brisket trimming knife. So they work very, very well. Very sharp knives. All the links I'll put down below here of what I'm using here on this cook video. I'm gonna get this down, trim it nice and even. You don't want too much fat. You want about a 1/4 inch of fat only on the fat cap here. I put it in a separate little bin here to where I save all the trimmings and put on and use as beef tallow later in the cook here. You don't want to throw any of this away. Some people, if you do enough cooks, you can use that for like sausage or different types of things for your recipes that you do. All right, I'm gonna see what this is looking like. I'm gonna flip this over too, see what we're looking at. This thing is beautifully marbled. I want to trim some of that down. I want to get a lot of these hangers out of the way because that's just gonna singe up and burn up. Get some of this fat off here too. I'm gonna eventually want to get some of this silver skin off too, because it's not gonna cook very neatly on the smoke here. All right, let's get this off. I mean, this marbling is gorgeous. So this is their gold label brisket. It's the top of the line from Snake River Farms that you can get, beautifully marbled. I'm going to trim down a couple of the edges here. I'm just making sure some of this, I'm going to actually trim this here in a second when I flip it back over. I'm just seeing how this bottom part is looking here today. Making sure we're getting some of this trimmed down here too, where there's a lot of there's like a fat pocket here where the point and the flat end meet together. It's just not going to render down very well on that big fatty pocket here. So making sure we're getting enough trimmed off here. All right, comment down below what you guys are doing for Traeger Day. If you guys have a Traeger and celebrate that, would love to hear what you guys are doing for this event here. Okay, here's some more little tidbits there. I'm gonna actually probably do a little more trimming here as well. So let's get this here. I'm gonna probably even this out a little bit here. You don't want too many corners with this. You want to make this more rounded, especially on the flat point, because again, those small little tidbits, they're gonna fry up on a long brisket cook. So you want to at least round it off, and I'll make little adjustments here as I go along the way on this. That one's pretty good. And a lot of times how you get really good at these is just practice, really. When I first did my first cook, it was kind of more narrower than, evenly rounded off here. Just takes practice, really. I mean, I've done my fair share of brisket cooks at this point. Let's get this here. Okay, this is looking pretty good. I'm gonna trim some of this edging down here. So I'm gonna use a different knife here. A little bit bigger one here to kind of get some of these bigger slabs off. I use the smaller one when it's more finer cuts, but use this big scimitar looking knife to get the bigger strips off here in one cut here. Alrighty. I'll get that little piece here too. And like you see here, you don't want this real thin part. You want to trim it up and kind of even it out here. Get some of this trimmed off. Otherwise, like I said, you're gonna have really crispy bits there. Over a long cook, that's not gonna be a good bite of barbecue. Just kind of even it out here. And again, this doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. You just want to get aerodynamicy down when it comes to a longer cook. Just looking at how thick that meat is and getting as bestly trimmed as you possibly can, or what could get caught along the way here. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, but you're cutting off good meat. Like I said, you can use it for sausage, grind it up for like hamburger patties or something. I mean, this would make excellent brisket hamburger patties. Okay, a little hanger there. And some people I've seen, like, you don't absolutely have to trim a brisket. I've seen some that they don't and they turn out okay. I'm personally a perfectionist when it comes to that, and I want every bit of this to taste absolutely perfect. So a lot of that, if you want more of a mouthfeel all around on a great looking and served brisket where everything cooks evenly, you definitely want to trim this down. All right, so this is looking pretty good on this end so far. As you can see, I'm gonna trim some of that down too. That's, you know, you wanna get a little less fat on that, so once I flip this over, I'll do it again here. Now I'm just getting some of these little scraggly bits where it's just not, and you want to do your best when you're getting some of the silver skin off. A lot of times silver skin isn't going to render down very well. As you can see, there's this part here. I'm going to get some of that as well because that's also a weird mouthfeel. Just enough to get some of that trimmed off so it's rendering properly, and you got some nice meat that won't have a weird mouthfeel when you're serving your guests or yourself or whoever you got coming over. This is for a group of friends we got coming over for a barbecue party that we're throwing here, me and my wife. So I wanted to make sure every bit of this is well seasoned, well trimmed. Every bit of barbecue slices off of this brisket are going to be served to perfection here. Okay, that one's looking pretty good. A little bit there. There we go. I'll get the smaller one for some of this. Probably turn this around and get that a little easier. Sweet. So yeah, I mean, this is coming along pretty good. Really, I mean, compared to a lot of briskets I've trimmed over time, this is actually not too bad. I've had to trim off quite a bit in the past of other briskets I've gotten in packers. So I mean, all things considering, this is actually pretty like least amount I've had to trim off. And like I said, most of the times you get a 14-pound brisket, you're probably trimming off 3 to 4 pounds at least of stuff to make it perfect for the smoke that you're putting it on. So yeah, this is looking pretty good, pretty rendered out there. Let's get this here. Again, we're just kind of getting some of this silver skin off, and that's the thing, when you're taking this out to trim, don't take it out and let it set for a bit. You want to trim a cold brisket because all this fat, especially Wagyu here, American Wagyu, Australian, whatever you're cooking, this is all gonna start thinning out and melting fairly quickly. So again, trim a cold brisket, don't trim a room temperature one. Making sure that's all looking good. All right. Sweet. So now I'm going to flip it over. See how this is looking? Get some of this trimmed down here. Oh yeah. And I'll show you all here in a little bit kind of what my trimmings are looking like here in a second, but this has got a decent amount of a fat cap, so I'm trying to make sure we're getting it thinned out as best as possible here so there's not so much to get rendered down. Good. All right. Oh yeah, there's quite a bit on this one. And it's okay if you hit a little bit of meat, you ain't gonna die. This has got plenty of fat on it. Just wanna have enough, but you'd rather have a couple spots where it's a little less than a lot, because again, it's really hard to render down a ton of fat all at once on a cook. So if you hit a little piece of meat, it's gonna be okay. You got other fat around it, it'll even out and still be protecting that brisket when you're cooking it down. So don't worry about taking a little much off of it. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, you nicked it, you nicked it. Who cares? Really, you're not gonna kill it. Even the professionals that do it for a living at barbecue restaurants, top 50 barbecue restaurants, they nick briskets. They're cutting quite a bit of these off at any given time. Again, even see I got a little bit much on that one there. I'm gonna even it out a little bit easier so it's not like a weird nick. There we go. And it'll be okay. That'll survive just fine because this is the point too. It's got plenty of fat in there to render out by itself. It'll be pretty well protected there. And this is a Wagyu brisket, so one of the things with Wagyu compared to a normal choice grade, there's a lot of fat, and really it's kind of, I mean, if you know what you're doing to a certain extent with this, it's kind of hard to screw this up. I know it's an expensive piece of meat, but this is pretty hard to screw up completely, just because there's a lot of fat in it. So getting this trimmed neatly down so it's not so much of a fat cap here to where it's going to be impossible to render that fully down, but you want enough there. Perfect. I have plenty for tallow there. I'm making sure it's just looking pretty good here. Trim this down. If any place you want to try and keep as good amount as possible is the point, not the point, the flat here where it's more leaner and not as fatty. Good, good. Perfect. We're getting pretty good at this point. Oh yeah. And as you can see, it's been out for a little bit here. Wagyu fat will start melting quicker than normal Angus fat, so that's the one thing to be cautious with. After a while, kind of on a timer for this, but no worries. This is going to cook pretty nicely down here. All right, getting this trim properly there. Again, it's me just making sure every bit of this is looking as flat and aerodynamic as possible on this. This is looking pretty good there. All right, looking good there, perfect. All right, so overall, I think we got what we're aiming for here. Pretty good sides there. Okay, so when we're looking at this here, it's pretty good overall. Enough fat there, about 1/4 of an inch. Good there. I'll trim a little bit off of that here. So just making sure we got enough there. Looking all around. So yeah, we'll get this so we can see some of that a little easier. Perfect. Good. All right, I think we're pretty well done with the trimming of this. There's a little silver skin on here. It won't hurt it at all. This is looking pretty well done. Some people might want to lop this off. This is good eating meat here. And this will render out very well. Wagyu, you'll get away with having a little bit of a thinner side here just because there's so much marbling here. Maybe a choice grade, you might want to trim it down a little more, but on a Wagyu, you can get away with doing a little less trimming on that, but all that's looking pretty good. A little bit on this side here. Trim that down a little bit. So I can feel that hard cap still there, and you don't want a ton of that. All that's pretty good. So yeah, this one's looking pretty well. Let me get this here. I'm gonna cut that a little better. There we go. All right. This is pretty well done and ready at this point. So this is kind of what a finished brisket should similarly look like there. Good trim there. Perfect there. Good aerodynamic. A little bit of a crown there. That's, you know, fine here as long as it's not like guarding here. This is going to take a while to render down. So right now what I'm going to do, I'm going to season this bad boy here. So at this point, I just add a little W sauce here. Now all I'm doing is using this as a binder. You don't have to. I like to do that just because a lot of this just adds a little bit of a umami flavor to it here. So I'm gonna flip this over, do this, and I like to season, my first side of seasoning will be this meat side up, just because this isn't gonna be presentation side. The fat cap will be presentation side. So you wanna add your heavier seasonings first, so like the pepper, big granulations there, you want to add that first before you add the finer like seasoning salt. You want to just kind of coat it nice and even. And this meat can take a lot of seasoning, so don't be shy thinking, oh my word, that's a lot of seasoning. This brisket gonna take a lot of seasoning. Just pat it in real nice and even. And I'm also gonna add the seasoning salt. This one, this is already got, so this is 2 parts 16 mesh black pepper, 1 part crystal diamond kosher salt, and a 1/2 part granulated garlic. So there is salt in here. It's just going to add a little extra punch if we just put a little bit of seasoning salt. Again, I'm not doing a ton, just enough to get a little extra flavor to it. But even if you put a little much salt on it, it's not going to kill it, because again, this fat can take a lot of seasoning and salt, especially on a Wagyu brisket here. And I want to make sure all these sides are seasoned well too. Again, you want every piece of this to get good flavoring on. Okay. Good. Oh yeah. Get all the sides seasoned well. All right. Sweet. So now what I'm going to do, flip this bad boy over. Do this other side here as well. Season it nice and evenly. If you want a good even spread of seasoning, you don't want to have this down really close and try and season here. You want to go a little higher up here where things are spreading pretty evenly and coating it in an even pattern. Making sure. Okay, sweet. We'll add a little bit of this Lowry seasoning salt. Don't need to add a ton. And it'll add a little extra pop to each bite that you're putting on and slicing here. So yeah, this is basically what a seasoned brisket looks like after you trim it nice and even. Just making sure all these sides are well coated here. So what I'm going to do at this point, I'm going to let this thing sit out for another 15 to 20 minutes. When I'm putting up my smoker to temperature, I'm going 180 for 10 hours overnight. I'm going to add a super smoke mode to it since my Trigger Woodridge Pro has that ability. If you don't have a super smoke mode, you don't have to. It just adds a little extra smoke flavor to it. And then in the morning, I'll be cranking up temperature. Foil boating is usually the way I do my briskets, to about 300 degrees. So here in a little bit, I'm going to be putting you out, showing you how I set it on the Traeger, how I also do setting up like my whole setup as I'm going to do this cook here. So stay tuned. I'll see you guys here in a little bit.